just say no. Kids are too smart for that. They want science behind that, why they shouldn't be doing it. These kids could get a hold of this and that it was such high potency. Talk to your kid. Don't sit down at the dining room table and say, now we're going to have a talk. For a safe, healthy, and drug-free community. Watch
Step Up to Save Our Children today.
Hello, and welcome back to Step Up to Save Our Children. My name is Denise Mayer, and today we are tackling a topic many parents feel uncomfortable discussing, but one we simply can't afford to ignore. Pornography and the effect on our teens is critical. Our teens are growing up in a world where pornography is more accessible, more normalized, and more aggressive than ever before. For many families, exposure happens earlier than ever expected, often through phones, social media, or peers. How is this affecting our children's emotions, minds, and relationships? And how can parents respond with wisdom instead of panic? Joining us today is Dr. Mandy Sanchez from Culture Reframed, an organization helping families navigate the impact of pornography and hyper-sexualized media on children and teens. Mandy, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Well, thank you. This is a topic I have wanted to tackle on the podcast for a very, very long time. And I'll tell you just really quickly that one of the middle school principals, probably 5 years ago, took me aside and said, we have to do something about this. I was shocked. Shocked. So I can't wait to just jump into all of this and talk about it. But let's first share with the audience a little bit about you. So Dr. Mandy Sanchez is a leading expert on the impact of pornography and hypersexualized media on youth. With over 25 years of experience in research, education, and advocacy, she has delivered hundreds of presentations and trainings on the harms of hypersexualized media and pornography, particularly its impact on our young people. She realizes and specializes in domestic and sexual violence, trauma, and the experiences of justice-involved women and children. As Director of Programming for Culture Reframed, she develops and leads trauma-informed, evidence-based initiatives that equip parents and adults to protect and support our young people. So welcome again, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me and tackling such a tough topic that some people shy away from. Yes.
They do, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but for parents who feel uncomfortable, like we're saying, even hearing this topic, why is this conversation as important as I know you know, and I think I know?
It's so important because, porn and hypersexualized media is everywhere. It really does shape the culture in which we live. And the porn industry really influences what we watch, what we see, what we consume. And pornography is telling stories. Not only is the majority of pornography violent and degrading to women, it tells stories about what it means to be a real man or be a real woman. It tells what it means to lack empathy and compassion and capacity for empathy. And this is what porn is teaching our children. So it's telling stories about what it means to exist in this society and really selling scripts about what it means to exist in a world to have relationships and connectedness. And it's selling a bunch of fake lies, basically. And so parents need to understand what the story is that porn is selling and how we really need to interrupt this story.
It's all frightening. So,
Mhm.
at what age are you thinking or seeing, or because this is what you do,
Mhm.
that children are becoming aware of this? How young would you even guess?
Yeah, well, we know that research shows that the average age that kids are connecting with pornography is about 12. Our anecdotal evidence shows as early as 9 to 11. So as soon as kids are connected to the internet, they have access to free, accessible online pornography. So as soon as they can get connected with a device, it is free, it is accessible, and it is anonymous. So no, most pornography that is mainstream is not age gated, so you can access that at any age. So we stress that as soon as parents are giving connected devices, we have to be aware of what's out there, and we have to start teaching digital media literacy early.
So, that was probably one of the biggest misconceptions that parents think, probably, is that it could be my child. I always say that,
Hmm.
oh, it's not my child or whatever, but that's
Right.
totally a misconception. What others are out there that parents would think?
Yeah, so that's a big myth. The not my kid myth is one, and it's supported by our research because research shows that that kind of parental naivete gap is definitely out there in research where parents and really adults are thinking, not my kid, and parents are estimating what their kids are seeing by up to 10 times depending on the behaviors that kiddos are reporting. So you get kids and parents together, and parents are saying, "Oh no, my kids aren't seeing that," and kids are actually saying, "Yeah, I've seen that. I've definitely seen that online," and that's because parents are saying, "Oh no, I protect my kid's phone or I don't give my kids a phone." But what they don't realize is that even if you don't let your kids watch that, or you have all of these apps that monitor them, they see that on the bus. Their friends have
Mm.
phones, right? They're getting this through other devices like Chromebooks or gaming platforms, or their friends have phones. So they're seeing it in other ways. So it's not just your kid, and I'm sure you're raising your kids in healthy ways, but conversations with kids are what kids need the most. They don't need apps that monitor them. Those are good, but those are also band-aid fixes. So they give parents a real sense of false security when we
Mhm.
go and try to bubble wrap them. But we at Culture Reframed say having these conversations are critical. They set up that safe space with which your kids are going to come to you then when they see you as the trusted source of information. So having that space to have those really quick 1 minute conversations that set the stage and scaffold the information to say, you can come to me if you see these things online, or if you get that little nervous feeling in your stomach that something just isn't right, come to me and let's talk about this and let me give you information to guide you through this.
Well, knowing that our children's brains are not fully developed till they're
Yeah.
pretty darn old. I can
Yep.
think of the decisions I made back when I was like 23. I'm thinking, "Oh my goodness." But
Absolutely.
they worked out, but, um,
Right.
yet with knowing that, how does the pornography affect their neurodevelopment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And although we're not neuroscientists or neurologists, we do work with them,
Mhm.
and we take a lot of that neuroscience research that talks about how the frontal lobe of our brain isn't fully formed, like you said, until 25 for most adolescents, sometimes 30 for males, and it's that part of the brain, that frontal lobe, that is in charge of all of those decision makings and judgment, that self awareness. So when that frontal lobe of our brain isn't fully formed yet, um, pornography is like a super normal stimulus. So our brain isn't yet developed, and it isn't ready for all of that dopamine that that supernormal stimulus as porn is giving us. So when we have that dopamine overload and when we're exposed to pornography, that dopamine receptors are going off in our brain at millions of miles an hour, right? And it's overloading our brain with dopamine. So you can imagine being 9, 10, 11 years old and seeing these images, these hypersexualized images over and over again, and being overloaded with stimulation, with that dopamine overload. And it actually serves to rewire parts of our brain. So the emotional and reward circuitry in our brain is being rewired, so that we're already unable to make sound judgments and to be self aware and have that empathetic response, but then having that dopamine overload. And as those neurons are firing and rewiring, that's having a desensitizing effect on us. So it's desensitizing our brain. We're wanting more in our brain, and of course, we're curious at that age, right? We're in a stage of life and developmental existence where we're wanting to learn about our bodies and our connectedness with ourselves and others, and that's physiologically we're having those responses. So we're curious and we are being turned on by some of the things that we're seeing. So that's the response that we're getting. And that industry understands that. So feeding us that dopamine and desensitizing us to want more. And so that's kind of the addicted part of our brain that keeps us wanting more and wanting us to go back. So it makes sense that we're unable to stop looking at those images. So it has a really it hits us at a really crucial age and stage of development, and that is why the vulnerabilities to porn exposures, it's so vulnerable to see at adolescence, and that's why we need to think about this earlier and earlier when we talk about porn critical sex education or porn critical awareness at this time.
So children that would be exposed to this, let's say at 11 or 10 or whatever,
Mhm.
probably would have a little bit different of, I don't want to say an outcome, but a journey, I would say, than someone that maybe started looking at it when they were like, college age or high school, or would would that be true?
Absolutely, because if you think about if you're starting this young at 8, 9, 10 years old, it's literally reshaping your brain. And more than 40 years of research shows that porn is undermining the whole person health of young people. So it's impacting that entire facet of their developmental wellness. So from social, emotional, cognitive, neurological, and physical health. So, our studies are showing that early access to pornography is literally shaping how young people think cognitively about sex and relationships, including how they process how respectful behavior looks like, what consent and equality and equity, and really their understanding of their bodies and biological processes feel and look like. Porn consumption has even been scientifically linked to negative self image, low self esteem, eating disorders, depression, anxiety, their decreased capacity for a long-term intimacy and connection and self-harm. It's also been linked to increased likelihood of boys engaging in early, risky, and violent sexual behaviors, and in girls, an increased likelihood of being sexually victimized. So it has these
Yeah.
long-term impacts going into adulthood as well.
Yeah, it's just overwhelming.
Mhm. It
But what
is.
would the links be probably um, with anxiety and depression and loneliness in teens? I would think, if you're coming home now, you've been, looking at this online or however you're doing,
Mhm.
and you come home, you think, I'm going to get home and I'm going to look at that. What I would just think that you would become very anxious and depressed all the time. Is that a
Yeah.
factor?
Absolutely, because if you think about comparison and how kids are comparison and the studies with social comparison, we can see that in when kiddos are looking at pornography and comparing their bodies, even when we see the social media research, we look at those studies, and as young people are looking at those images on social media and they're comparing their bodies and themselves, and they're thinking, oh, you know, my body doesn't look like that. I need my body to look like that. Young girls are saying, well, I'm not thin enough. I'm not beautiful enough. My skin's not perfect enough. And then we have all these multi-billion-dollar industries selling you products that get you there, that are literally saying to young people, you're not enough. You're not good enough, right? We have this manosphere telling boys that they need to looks backs, right? And literally cause harm to their face by injecting peptides into their skin or smashing their bones in order to have the perfect jawline, right? This is what we're seeing on social media platforms, but we also see this when kids, consume pornography. They're thinking that their bodies aren't big enough or small enough, or they don't perform like those porn performers. So it causes increased anxiety and depression because they don't think that they are acting like the porn performers. Their bodies aren't doing what those performers are doing. They're not having sex like the porn performers. So it increases their body consciousness, increases disordered eating, increases disordered thoughts about their bodies. So they're hitting the gym, or they're doing really horrible things to make their bodies try to work in the ways that actors do in pornography, or the pornographers do. So it's really dangerous to start that very young. And it has increased levels of anxiety, body loathing, risky sexual behaviors. If you think about it, consent is not existent in pornography, and neither is protection. So you don't see those things in pornography. So that is being replicated in real life at very, very young ages. So that poses a huge risk to young people when they try to mimic what they're seeing in pornography.
So, what part, if any, and I know the answer, it's going to be for sure,
Mhm.
for some trauma, sexual abuse trauma, um, what is the connection then with, the pornography and, you know, what what's that connection look like?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, the entire scene that is set up in pornography is trauma. Just really no other way to describe it, because increasingly, from 40 years on, we see increased violence, misogyny, racism, and sexual violence in the average porn scene, in pornography. So the behaviors that we see in porn are increasingly violent. So if we want to talk about excuse me, replication of that violence, in research, and specifically in the research that I have done in the past 20 years, we see this pornography being used as a training manual for abuse. And you can see that correlation happening. If you want to replicate what you're seeing in pornography, that is the ultimate training manual for abuse. We see the work that we've been doing in the child advocacy centers, where they are reporting anecdotally, but they're reporting that they're seeing increased child-on-child sexual assaults across the board in all 50 states, and around the globe. So when we see that young people, and the ones who are taking the calls on the first reporters on child sexual abuse, saying that they're reporting kids are doing what they see in porn to each other at very young ages. There's no other explanation besides, having this done to them by adults, but seeing, replications through pornography, that pornography is this training manual for abuse. And more research is showing that this is the case.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, it really is when you think how we have come, I'm a very old mother, grandmother, whatever, but it just absolutely blows my mind
Mhm.
that this is out there and so accessible for the children. Back in the day, we used to, if they were saying, well, we're going to go play doctor or something about that, you'd be like, wait a minute, we're going to talk
Right.
about that. I mean, that's nothing now. I mean, this
Mhm.
is what you just described is just horrendous to me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Denise, I do a lot of work on how kids are accessing this, and 70% of porn exposure, first-time porn exposure, is accidental. So it's
Right.
not like we have a generation of kids who are going out there and looking for pornography.
Right.
And I want to make that very clear that kids aren't going out there looking for this. This has seeped into our culture. So we are living in a pornified world, right? We are living in a hypersexualized, pornified culture where we don't really have to go looking for this. This is just everywhere, right? So we used to say, a few decades ago, sex sells, right? But it really does. And it's just so normalized. And I think that that's the point is that if we look on, sexualized games, this is geared towards young children. So we see this in Roblox and Minecraft. We see these. A lot of the work that I do is looking at YouTube Kids and Instagram and how these children's cartoons are and repackaged and sold as normalized. Even marketing, advertising, the way we sell perfume and ads and sexualized and hypersexualized. I had a young mom come to me the other day when I was doing a lecture, and she was saying, "Do you know how hard it is to buy? And these clothes are this big for our young kids, especially girls, where they have very limited choices on how to dress because they want to emulate their favorite pop stars, like they want to emulate their influencers, and our kids are being
Absolutely.
influenced by the time they're 6. And, this is kind of the world in which we live, but we can't just shrug our shoulders and say, well, this is just how it is. Like we have to really take a look at this critically and analyze it. And we're not shaming or blaming. Well, this is just how it is. I guess we just have to deal with it. It's important to not shame or blame. But it's also important to take a critical look and say, hey, we got to understand that this is what this industry is selling our kids, and here's the serious repercussions of this.
Absolutely. I have a granddaughter that is going to be 14 next week, and her mother was taking her shopping for clothes for her birthday.
Mhm.
And I mean, they even label some of these skirts micro
Yeah.
skirt. They're
Mini
not kidding.
micros. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and she said it was terrible trying to find something that my granddaughter liked, but also that wasn't looking like, you
Little.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Itty bitty.
exactly. And
Hmm.
and so I know that that's 100% true.
Yeah.
I just, the world that they're living in is, I mean, it's making a child, and that's what they are, children, look like sex objects.
Hmm.
And, as a father, grandfather, whatever, you can look and go, well, that is ridiculous. But as a leering older man or even a teenager to a 14-year-old,
Hmm.
those thoughts, particularly if they're involved in a lot of the pornography, are very different, and they're
Yeah.
not safe.
Right, right. And another theme that we're seeing, we're childifying them, and we're childifying the adults,
Mhm.
and we're adultifying the children.
Right.
And so this is a huge theme that we're seeing in pornography that has become very, very alarming, is that the pornography that we have seen, the trends that we have seen in pornography, is that they're becoming less adultifying, and more childifying. So the themes that we see are teens and step and incest and cheerleader and teacher. So we
Mhm.
see these themes where the women the adult women are made to look like children,
Yep.
right? And so though it's taken a very alarming turn in adult pornography where adult women are made to look like children, surrounded by images of childhood where this is not a fetish, this is mainstream. So we have to be aware of what this industry now is marketing and selling as normal. So we're normalizing the grooming of young children in an industry that is geared towards adults. So it's mass perpetrating on our children. So this industry, this multi-billion-dollar unregulated industry that is mass perpetrating on our children. So yes, we have to pay attention to the individual groomers and individual perpetrators, like the Epsteins of the world, but we
Right.
also have to pay attention to this mass industry that is profiting off of, the wholesale grooming and sexualization of children.
Absolutely. And just like, you always would see like somebody'd say, oh, well, they're dressing them in a school uniform and they're 30 years old. So I totally,
Exactly.
totally
Hmm.
understand that. But even for, because I've done a thing on sex trafficking,
Hmm.
that we have a podcast on that. And I think a lot of what was said on that is that these children, like you said, are trying to look like adults, and then they are targets for these groomers and pimps and whatever
Hmm.
because they think that this is normal or typical growing up behavior when it's totally not.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
just
And we've, and there are other legitimized, and I'm putting that in quotations, there are other legitimized industries that are also profiting off of that mentality, like the skincare industry, where you
absolutely.
have skinfluencers in
Mhm.
this, $164 billion industry that's profiting off of 10-year-old skinfluencers who
Mhm.
are selling their products, at these, Sephora's and the Ultas are profiting off of these skinfluencers. And then you have your, big box retailers and, these other influencers that are making tons of money that move right into OnlyFans, where
Mhm.
OnlyFans now is just a social media platform. Actually, it's pornography, right? And we're looking at this, natural progression of social media into an adult entertainment industry, but so young, where we forget that most social media platforms, you technically have to be 13 in order to have an account, but yet we've got 6 and 8-year-olds on this platform starting very, very young, modeling
Mm.
or singing or don't or parents are putting them up or whoever's putting them up on these platforms in order to get rich quick or get be an influencer. 1 in 4 Gen Alphas want to be social media influencers and not teachers or doctors or firefighters, and this is the new generation. This is the new wave. And we need to have some healthy skepticism here. And we need, and that is why we're pushing for critical digital media literacy. It is not enough to take away a phone, ban social media. It is not enough for those things. I don't even know if we should be doing those things without education, right? Because kids are still going to access these platforms. They're still going to get on a phone. So without teaching them the skills to be safe and to be healthy, um, we're still going to have groomers and perpetrators and these industries. So
Yes.
I think it's really important to do that.
I think that's the only answer, actually. I
Hmm.
mean, it makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
Um, yes. I mean, like I talk about a lot of the substances that are out there that attract the kids very young,
Hmm.
vaping and all that. And as I always say, all of this stuff continues to evolve. And
Right.
so the only way to do it is to do some prevention and talking to the children.
Hmm.
So, what would you say might be some signs that, a young person is involved in this? What would a parent look for?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we always push for, being very present, and really trying to, and every parent or caregiver understands their kids, and we know that kids all look different depending on their age and stage of development. But some big signs, and not just for porn consumption or exposure, but this is, trafficking, grooming online. These warning signs are good to go for any of these things. So if they're withdrawing from friends or family or activities that they once loved or enjoyed doing, it might, like soccer, or they don't want to hang out with this group of friends anymore. Hey, it might be okay. That might, they just might not like soccer anymore, but it would be good to ask. It would be good to say, hey, I noticed you don't want to hang out with this group of friends. Was it a coach? Was it did something happen? So be inquisitive about that. If they are spending a ton of time in the bathroom at your house, and they don't have a problem, they don't have a medical issue, it is important to know that bathrooms are a place of privacy for kids, and they will go there, especially with a connected device. It might be good to start implementing a no connected device in the bathroom policy. I do this at home, to say we are not taking cell phones in the bathroom. There's a lot of things that we can do. First of all, it's just kind of gross to have your cell phone in the bathroom. You just might not want to do that. You can, drop it in the toilet. That would be gross. But also, kids take pictures of themselves in the bathroom. They can send messages. They can chat, they can talk, might not want to do that. Also, connected devices in the bedroom, especially to sleep with. I know that we probably hear that a lot, but kids on average get about 237 notifications per day on their phone. That's a Common Sense Media stat that I always use in my presentations. 237 notifications. That's a lot, and over half of them happen at night. So you can imagine that blue light coming off, and that need to get on your phone and check out who liked my picture, who texted me back, like who's following me on social. That need, that craving to just want to check the phone. Plus, a connected device, in the bedroom is just, it's not good for kids because of that. And, my kids were like, but how am I going to wake up? How am I going to? Well, get an alarm clock.
Alarm clock,
You can connect
I
it.
always say that.
Right. You can connect it to your room. Your fingers hurt by pushing down the buttons and setting that time, but you can do that. And my kiddos still walk their phones out. They're 14 and 18, and they still walk their phones and put them in the living room, to sleep with. So you can do it. Do that. And also, if they are using inappropriate or age and developmentally skewed sexual language, and that's coming up a lot, when it's, they're not just mimicking songs. This is also another good way to pay attention, or to start a conversation. If they're mimicking lyrics to a song and you're like, hey, bud, I noticed, like, what was that you just said? And oftentimes I'll turn down, the song, and I'll say, what did you say? And of course my kid's like, nothing. I didn't say anything. And it's a way to start a conversation. Like, what did you mean by that? Or what do you think he meant by that? And start that conversation. And do you know what that means when he says, I'll choke you, but I ain't no killer, right? And then I'll be like, oh, I didn't know. I didn't know what that meant. And then you can start talking about that. But yeah, if they're tucking their phone under their leg when you walk in, or closing their laptop when you walk into the room, I always say they might be planning a special surprise for you, but probably not.
Probably.
Probably not. They probably don't want you to see what's on, but start a conversation. And it might just be in passing. The best way to do it, when you're on a walk, when you're on a drive, when you're not making eye contact with them, right? You're in a car, you have a short distance. Hey, I noticed that, you did the old tuck and stuff when you didn't want me to
Yeah.
see what was on your
What
phone.
is on there?
And what's on there? What are you doing? If they are, under the age of 16, they don't have a job, but they all of a sudden have money, gifts.
Mm.
They have things. They're going places. They have the ability to buy stuff. If you have some charges on your credit card, on your bank statement, you have some withdrawals that you have no idea where that's coming from. Um, Take a notice to that, because you got to know where they're getting money in the game. If they have Robux, if they have Fortnite cash that you are like, where are you getting this money? Pay attention to that too. Also, gaming. Try no headphones if they first start gaming. You want to know who they're talking to online, who they're chatting with. We should be able to know who our who our kids are talking to on and offline. You wouldn't send them to a sleepover without knowing who their friends are there. So you need to know who they're hanging out with.
Yeah, and you brought up a point earlier, obviously in the bathroom or in their bedroom, with
Yeah.
their devices and the door shut or whatever, that some of these young, I think it's probably more girls than boys, but I don't know that for a fact, are sexting, pictures of themselves.
Yeah.
Somebody had said, and I think it seems like they kind of get taken in by, I'll only look at this myself. I won't share it. And it
Mm,
always turns out so badly that it is shared, sometimes at the whole school.
yeah.
And, you know, I mean, that can have some terrible repercussions, not only immediate, but down the road,
Hmm.
for being hired for a job or, any of
Yeah.
those type of things. So what would you say about, the sexting part? How
Yeah.
big of a problem is it, I guess?
Yeah, it's a growing concern. Almost every school that we speak to, almost every parent night, community night that we do, it's something that our school administration, our community talks mention, or we talk to. We have an entire fact sheet, a white paper on our website that talks about sexting and the harms of sexting and sextortion, which is a huge issue across the United States and around the world. We often tell young people, once you send it, it's not yours, right? You can never get it back. We try to do that, but you never know. And your digital footprint is something that you have to make sure that you take care of, and it's so important. Growing up, I didn't have to worry about that, right? I could take a picture at a party and never develop the film, right?
Right.
We didn't have to worry, because and then it never happened, because then I could rip up the pictures, and I didn't have to worry about that. But it is something that we educate about, the pressure to sext, the pressure to send nude photos. We have parents courses that walk parents through, how do we talk about that with kids? How do we talk about what those pressures are? And in our talks with young teens, we talk about how to say no to that. And we talk about, hey, let's just not ask. Like, what does that mean where we're in a place where we're asking, especially boys asking girls to send this? What does that mean when we're asking girls, especially, to send these? And what does that mean to send unsolicited pictures of our penises to people? Like, what does that say about us? What does that say about respect, about relationships? And what is that? Because that is child sexual abuse material if you're under the age of 18, and that is illegal, and it has serious legal repercussions as well. Most everywhere in the United States does. So we do talk about the legality of that, about the serious repercussions and consequences, but about the damaging trauma that just one picture
Mhm.
has when that is sent to you, but also what could happen if you're being sextorted, and just how to say no to that, what to do, because most kids don't know how to handle those situations. So, what do we do if we get those requests, on gaming platforms? How do we report that? And a lot of schools don't have policies in place. So we're
Mhm.
actually helping schools to develop policies on, what do we do if this is happening in our schools? How do we shut it down? How do we get kids to report this, without fear, without shame, without blame, and without punishment of the victims that are involved?
So, just for our audience, just explain like a simple sextortion kind of thing of what that would look like so
Yeah.
they understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So often this happens with young boys. And we're seeing this a lot online where um, kids will be online and they'll be chatting typically with someone that they think is their friend. And they will, be asked for a picture or they'll be asked to do something. And then they'll get lured into, well, I will give you money in this game if you send me some pictures. And sometimes they'll be asked to send pictures of themselves or get pictures of classmates or, send me pictures of your friends, do an upskirt, which is taking pictures, up literally up the skirt of their classmates, send me feet pictures, and it might start innocuous like that. Send me pictures of your feet, and then it will progressively move up. Send me a picture of your leg, and then it will gradually move up. Sometimes what we see is a sextortionist say, I have pictures of you, and they will use AI to create pictures of this person. They'll pull pictures off of their profile, pictures of a social media account, and say, I have these pictures. And they will generate a nude photo of them with a Nudify app, and they will show them the pictures that they have. And of course, you'll say, these aren't me. They look like me, but you face swapped me. So the sextortionist will put your face on a nude body and say, these are the pictures that I have of you. And if you don't send me real pictures, I will send these around to your school. I will show your mom these. I will send these, to your cheer coach or whatever it is if you don't send me real pictures. And so the young person will send them actual real pictures. And then there begins the sextortion. Now you send me money. I need $500. And it becomes more pictures or more money. And so we see teens, we've heard horrible stories across the country of teens feeling like, I don't have this money or I'll get this money, and they send money and then they're all out of money and they don't know what they do. And sometimes, unfortunately, this is ending up in suicide. This is
Mhm.
ending up in self-harm. This is ending in real tragedy across the United States. So we're really putting education out there to schools, to young people, to parents on how to stop this before never give in to a sextortionist. This is not the end. We can work to get these pictures down. We can, never give money to someone who's asking for this. Always report, never send. Report this to the nearest trusted adult. Report to the police, never delete. Always save and never forward any of these requests.
Which is such great advice.
Hmm.
So, well, obviously, you mentioned that you're going into schools
Hmm.
and, with some of the programs, we're going to talk about Culture Reframed here in a minute, because I
Yeah.
want everybody to understand how wonderful that website is and
Hmm.
amazing. I was looking at this to prepare for this, and some of the things, well, the AI, I've seen that, I guess, on a show or something, but
Hmm.
some of the things I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, as I always say, all parents aren't created equal. Some are much more, investigative, and they look into
Mm.
things and they educate themselves or find ways to educate. And other parents are just sort of oblivious. But this is not something you can be oblivious about. It's way
Right.
too important.
Right.
And I'm guessing, and I want you to comment on this, down the road, these young people start with this, and now they mature and their brains are fully developed, hopefully, and
Hmm.
they find somebody they're really interested in and they get married, or have some relationship. And then I can imagine how this might all come back to haunt them
Mm.
into a normal relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because we do talk to people, to survivors who have had their images shared, or um, it's very rare that we talk to anyone exited from the porn industry who has had, OnlyFans or porn, because it's so hard to get out of that industry. We talk to survivors of the trafficking industry. We talk to them, but it's so hard because the shame and the trauma is so built up in these survivors of the industry, but we do. And they do go on to build healthy and quote unquote normal, healthy lives and relationships. It is hard. There are organizations that work to take those images down, like NCMEC, take it down. And we do see legislation that's being passed at the federal level to work to get those images taken down, especially if they were shared without consent. But even if they were put up when these young people were really young, but it is trauma, and it is years and years of working through trauma. But I should mention that the great thing about your brain is that your brain is neuroplastic, right? And neuroplasticity means that it can bounce back, right? Your brain is a beautiful, magical thing that once that you stop watching porn and you replace that supernormal stimulus and get it, remove it, and replace that, take away that overloaded dopamine with healthy levels of dopamine with exercise, right? And other, regulatory levels of dopamine, that your brain can actually rewire, right, to healthy, safe levels of dopamine. And so that is the amazing point of the neurological point of that. And that means that you can relearn, right? And because this is the beautiful part of the human existence, is that you can relearn connection, you can relearn empathy, you can relearn how we can connect with each other in healthy ways. We can relearn what the script should be, with empathetic connection. And so we can relearn the scripts that porn has hijacked from us. So that's the wonderful thing about our brains and connectivity and the human experience, because we can do that. So there are ways to move past pornography, and we can do that because we're human, and that's the beautiful thing about that. So and I think that's the beauty of taking back the narrative, and that's what we're trying to do with reframing our culture.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
But what that requires to a certain extent is identifying it,
Hmm.
knowing that it's having these implications and
Hmm.
effects on a person or a relationship. And unfortunately, I think there are a lot of young people out there and parents and that they don't seek that because they don't know. They don't
Yeah.
understand that. And that's why I think this and Culture Reframed is so important to
Hmm.
try to educate people about this so that they don't get into the dark side of what's going to end up just absolutely being a terrible, tragic thing in their lives going
Right.
forward.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's why this awareness education is so important. We are lifelong educators in this field, and that's what we want to do, get to as many people, as many organizations, schools, communities as possible, just to spread this word that it is not too late to take back this culture. We have to do this young. We have to start this early and to start reclaiming this, because we do believe that young people deserve authentic, real, connected, healthy sexual lives, and this needs to be theirs, that they create without the script of a multi-billion-dollar predatory industry.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming that I think it was in 2015 you started
Mm-hmm.
the Culture Reframed
Yes.
and obviously saw a need to do this. So let's
Hmm.
talk about that a little bit because that is just chock full of resources that are
Yeah.
amazing and wonderful. So tell me how that all got started and where you're headed with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, our founder and CEO, Dr. Gail Dines, has been researching, writing about, presenting about pornography and the harms of hypersexualized media on youth for decades, for about four decades. And she started Culture Reframed as a nonprofit, and we have just celebrated our 11th year. And so, we first started in parent education, and so we developed 2 parent education courses. They are free online courses that really give parents a science-based framework. So it's different from a lot of other organizations because we are science-based, research-backed. We are not religiously or politically affiliated. So we work to give parents a really gentle and safe way to have conversations with kids about pornography. And believe it or not, our research shows that kids want to have these conversations with parents, even when they act like they don't. And as a result, children are able to prepare for what to do when they see porn and know that they can approach a safe adult to talk about it without getting into trouble. And so our courses have guided conversation scripts on a variety of those tough to talk about topics to really help parents gain confidence that they need to have these necessary conversations. So, those courses go through all of these ways to really build confidence. And after educating yourself, we just suggest aiming for those 1 minute, really impactful discussions over those really huge 1 hour long lectures, and approaching those, really without shame and without blame to start those conversations. So, like you said, they are chock full of educational based resources. We have an academic library for all of those who want to go through the research. And we have a porn critical sex education curriculum for educators who are interested in teaching porn critical sex education or bringing that into the schools. And for anybody who works with kids from a child serving side, we have child serving professional resources that we just put out there for child serving professionals. And all of this is free. Gail says that we have a really horrible business model because we offer everything for free. But that's because we don't want access to be an issue. So that is really important to us that we put all of this out there for everyone so that they can start now, access it. I mean, you can look through our white papers, our fact sheets, our conversation starters. We have media guides. We have everything. Like we have social media and cell phone contracts that you can walk through with your kiddos just to start the conversation, even if you don't print out the contract and walk through it with your kids. Because kids like to feel like they have ownership. And, if they want a phone that bad, they will sign their life away to anything that you suggest. Like mine
true,
did.
yeah.
Mine was like, I will be grounded for 10 years if I mess up. And so we're like, okay, how about 2 days?
Yeah.
Whatever makes a difference. But it really walks parents through and really adults through how do we do this? Because parents aren't meant to go through this parenting job, this hardest job in the world, by themselves. And
No.
especially talking about porn and hypersexualized media and AI and all of the stuff that we load on to the back of parents and really on teachers. And we talk about legislation and regulation and all the things that we're doing kind of on a macro level as well. So there's ways to get involved. There's, a newsletter that we send out. There's ways to donate since we are a nonprofit. So there's all kinds of things that we're doing to keep you involved in getting the word out.
I just think it's wonderful. And as I said, I have wanted to do a podcast on this for a very long time. And
Yeah.
I know it sounds ridiculous, but it was really difficult to find the right person to do it. I'm so glad that I have found you
Yeah. Oh, me
because
too.
it is. And there's so many aspects to this
Yeah.
from somebody claiming at a party after the prom that they were sexually assaulted, then
Yeah.
and maybe they were, maybe they weren't.
Mm.
I mean, he said, she said, there's just so many levels to this. And
Yeah.
what they learn, on these different sites can then equate to a rape or a
Yeah.
other sexual violence and things like that, that the parent would maybe be the last person in the world to have any idea that that child felt that way or was violent. But
Yeah.
talking to them, opening those doors and letting them know that you are leading with love, because
Hmm.
they're the most important person in your life, and you're just trying to protect them, makes all the sense in the world to me.
Absolutely. And I do want to mention when you said that kind of how do we know question, I want to plug another organization that we're partnering with. We are working with Safe Bay, an organization that just came out with a really amazing tool called Check Your Vibe. And this is exactly what you're talking about. It is checkyourvibe.org. I'll send you the information on that, but it literally walks kids through. I'm not sure if I crossed a line.
Yeah.
Did I cross a line? Am I a bad person? Did I commit a sexual assault? This is a place where kids can go, a private space to really think it through. You can literally walk this through. Did I do something wrong? Am I a bad person here? Like, what did I do in this instance? We have walked through this with them. We are working. They are a sexual assault prevention education group that take their information into schools. They are a peer-to-peer advocacy group all across the United States, and we're working with them to increase their education to bring a porn critical lens to their great work that they already do. So we are partnering with them. So I would love to add them into the discussion
Yep.
here too,
Well,
because
that's
they're
amazing, and I
yeah,
jotted that down, so I will put
yeah,
that in the show notes.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
It
that
is
is great because
amazing.
I know that comes up,
It does.
and it comes up even in my where I live, that it's come
Yep.
up a couple of times, and I think that, education to our children will help that so much not
Yes.
to be a big issue. So,
Absolutely.
well, Mandy, we are coming up on a hard stop. I cannot thank you
Yeah.
enough for being on
Oh,
today. I can't.
yes.
I'm so excited to get this out there next week
Hmm.
and let everyone know all the wonderful things that Culture Reframed is doing and has on their website. Again,
Yeah.
also the Check Your Vibe. I got that one
Yeah.
too, and I'll put that on there. But
Yeah.
um, parents are sometimes very hesitant to even speak to other parents about this.
Hmm.
They feel like they're acting like they're a bad that they could be perceived as a bad parent, or that,
Yeah.
now they've got this sexually hypersensitive child,
Hmm.
that they must have done something. And so I think that this can break the stigma of that
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
bring this out into the open where we can all see it with light and not darkness and
Hmm.
make a difference. So I can't thank you
Absolutely.
enough. This is wonderful information. So
Yes.
I appreciate it. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you so much, Denise. I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, I'm so happy. So,
Yeah.
Mandy, thank you so much for this important conversation and for equipping parents with both truth, but also hope. If today's episode encouraged you, my audience, challenged you, or helped you think differently, please share it with another parent, friend, teacher, or youth leader. These are conversations that families need to be having. Please subscribe to our podcast, Step Up to Save Our Children, on Apple and YouTube, or listen on Spotify, and follow us on social media. Remember, none of us are expected to parent perfectly. We just need to stay present, stay informed, and keep this conversation going. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.